We're talking about compound inequalities today. We've done a lot of lessons on inequalities. You need to be pretty good with the inequality lessons in order to fully grasp compound inequalities. So if you're not totally comfortable with graphing or interval notation, I want you to go back and watch those videos first before you try to do compound inequalities. Compound inequalities are just a special type of inequality. It's when you have two inequalities and you connect them into one statement using the word and or the word or. Here are some examples. X is greater than 10 and less than 20. Try to think of some numbers that are greater than 10 and less than 20. I can think of 11, 12, 13, 13 and a half, 13.9, anything between 10 and 20. Another way of saying this would be to say X is between 10 and 20. Another example, Y is less than 0 or greater than 30. Two inequalities there, less than 0 is one of them, greater than 30 is the other one. But this time, it's not possible to think of a number that's both of those at once. There's no number that's less than 0 and greater than 30. We're using the word or, and the solutions would be any numbers that fit one or the other. Okay, that's some examples would be negative 10, 45, 100. Okay, those are three different solutions to this inequality. And here are some examples that use different phrases besides greater than, less than, but have similar meanings. These are all written in words, but just like the other inequalities we've talked about, they could be represented using inequality notation, using graphs, or using interval notation. So we're going to review all of those things quickly. I've split my page into the ands and the ors. And I'm going to start with the ors because they're actually a little bit less complex, less complicated. So here's an example of an or inequality. Y is less than 3 or greater than 5. And so the solutions would be any numbers that satisfy one or the other of these inequalities. If I wanted to graph the solutions, it would be negative 100, negative 99, negative 98, negative 2, nope, sorry, not negative 2, negative 4, I was thinking. And then there would be a gap. The numbers between negative 3 and 5 wouldn't fit. And then any number bigger than 5 could be a solution. So what I'm really saying is I'm going to graph this, and I'm going to graph this, both together on the same number line. So I need a negative 3 and a 5 on my number line. And put open circles on both, since the solutions can't be negative 3 or 5. And then on the negative 3 side, I'm going to go to the left. On the 5 side, I'm going to go to the right. And inequalities with the word or will always look like that, kind of two arrows going apart from each other. And inequalities, here's an example, could usually be rewritten with the idea that the numbers are between. So between 9 and 20 is another way to say that a number is greater than 9 and less than 20. To rewrite an and inequality as a compound inequality, you can kind of squish it together into one statement. You would have to turn around one of the inequalities so that the x's are together in the middle. I'll show you what I mean by that. On the left here, we can turn this inequality around, write it with the 9 on the left and the x on the right. And we have to keep the small side of the sign towards the 9. So it would be rewritten like this. And then since the x's are together, we could rewrite this using just one x. So we would write 9 is less than x is less than 20. And it would look like this. 9 is less than x is less than 20. Or another way to say that is x is between 9 and 20. When you graph an and inequality, you need to put both numbers on the number line. Then you use open or closed circles depending, but in this case they'll be open circles on the 9 and the 20. And we want to fill in all the solutions. Those would be the numbers between 9 and 20. So and inequalities look like barbells. Okay. Now you can also do interval notation. I'll put that on the next slide. I'm just going to move the graphs up so I have a little bit more room. And I'll start with the ORs. To do the interval notation, I'm just going to do this interval here, and I'm going to do this interval here, and I'm going to connect them with a symbol that means OR. So you should be able to write the interval for y is less than -3. It looks like this. The symbol for OR is the letter U. We use U because it stands for union. So it means bringing two things together. And then you would write the interval for y is greater than 5, which looks like this. To do an and inequality, there's no gap, so you don't need to write two separate intervals. You can just write one interval that starts at 9 and goes up to 20. And since those are both open circles, we'd use parentheses on both. So that's the interval for an and inequality. I have an example here that you can try. First, I want you to try writing this as a single inequality, and then I want you to graph and write the interval notation. You can pause the video and do that now. To write this as a single inequality, you have to put this inequality on the left-hand side because -6 is smaller than 2. We want that to line up with the number line. So I'm going to move this over to the left, and when I do, I'm going to turn it around so that the -6, which is the smallest thing, is all the way on the left. And then this sign will turn around and the x will be in the middle. And then to combine that into one inequality, we just overlap these two x's. So it will say -6 is less than x is less than 2. To graph that, we need a -6 and a +2 on the number line. They're going to be open circles over both, and they connect in the middle because it's an and inequality, and x is between -6 and 2. So the interval would look like this. One more example for you. It's a similar example. Rewrite with the -6 on the left again, and then squish it together with the x's in the middle. This time we're going to have to use a closed circle, and that's also going to mean that when we get to interval notation, you'll have a square bracket, a hard bracket, on the +6. So my interval will look like this. Excuse me, my graph will look like this, and my interval like this. Those are the first two questions on the next page of your packet on the practice. So you should have, at this point, done the first two, and you can move forward and practice that a little bit more.